In the dead of night across California, a sprawling, warped mansion emerges from the mist. Stairways leading to nothing, doors swinging open against solid barriers. Panes of glass, staring across at identical ones. A wooden and glassy labyrinth. This unfolds the shadowy tale of America's most doomed estate, the Winchester House. Viewed from afar, it appears nearly enchanting, a storybook castle, boasting spires, verandas, and vibrant-colored windows. Yet within its walls, each corridor seems off-kilter. Every footfall carries a sense of being observed, and each fastener was driven by a woman convinced that halting construction would spell her end. Sarah Winchester, widow of the tycoon whose firearms claimed the West. Her wealth stemmed from a weapon, responsible for countless lives lost. Mediums warned her that vengeful spirits of the slain pursued her, prompting her to erect this dwelling as protection. Construction ran non-stop for 38 years, fueled by dread rather than blueprints. Chambers walled off and abandoned forever. Hidden corridors that staff avoided in solitude. Guests reported echoes of steps in deserted passages and whispers uttering their names. Was Sarah Winchester a grief-stricken eccentric lost in sorrow? Or did she grasp a sinister truth about this abode that lingers beyond our willingness to accept? Chapter 1. The woman who vanished within her creation. The laborers sensed unease. Dawn after dawn, they passed through the entrance of the vast property in San Jose, California. They gathered their equipment, reviewed any directives provided, and erected flights of steps, corridors, sleeping quarters, lavatories, and whole extensions that sprouted in mere weeks. Yet they rarely glimpsed the employer funding it all. Sarah Winchester remained elusive. She glided unseen through the structure, conveying orders via notes, dispatching wages via attendance, and doodling illogical blueprints on fragments. A portal reaching 7 feet upward, risers merely 2 inches high, a pane embedded in the flooring. The crew held back inquiries. The jobs were reliable. Compensation flowed promptly, and amid the 1890s financial turmoil and instability, that sufficed. Still, they murmured in private. They speculated she conducted rituals at midnight in a chamber sporting 13 wall pegs. They claimed she tolled a bell at midnight to call forth entities, and once more at 2 a.m. to banish them. They insisted she feared phantoms of Winchester rifle victims stalking her, and that perpetual expansion was the sole method to disorient them, leaving them adrift. Certain workers deemed her deranged. Others viewed her as oddly astute. A handful thought she embodied both traits simultaneously. What stands confirmed, Sarah Winchester came into an inheritance valued at about $500 million in modern terms. She channeled it into a residence that scorned reason, one that expanded, contorted, and coiled inward across almost 4 decades. By her passing, it ranked among the oddest edifices in American history. Building persisted relentlessly. Day shifts pounded and cut beneath the California sky. Evening teams toiled by lantern glow, their implements resounding across the fruit groves. Locals noted the constant clanging, day or night. Some likened it to a pulse. Sarah allegedly rested just hours each evening. Attendants described her roaming the passages in darkness, inspecting spaces, securing latches, straining to hear. What exactly? They couldn't say. Perhaps echoes not her own, perhaps murmurs, perhaps a hush that hinted at restraint. The estate evolved into a puzzle of paths, 160 chambers in total. 40 sets of stairs, 10,000 panes, 2,000 portals. Certain ones connected to everyday spots. Others terminated abruptly. A wardrobe just 3 inches wide, a flue halting before the ceiling. A second-story exit dropping straight 15 feet to the grounds outside. Callers dwindled over time, but those who visited described an unnatural vibe. Not the typical spectral chill of legends, but an inherent distortion, like navigating a delirium, with passages looping unexpectedly, areas appearing to alter out of sight. Still, Sarah pressed on with additions. She sustained the crew's livelihood. She expanded the structure ceaselessly, offering no rationale. To grasp the motive, trace back to New Haven, Connecticut. To a youthful bride, entering one of the nation's richest yet most divisive dynasties. To the firearm that sparked it all. To the origins. Chapter 2. The firearm that forged a dynasty. At first glance, the Winchester rifle seemed unremarkable. A basic, lever-operated model. Wooden stock, steel tube, and a system allowing quicker rechambering than prior weapons. Yet that rapidity transformed the landscape. Prior to the Winchester, troops or pioneers needed to halt, awkwardly handle gunpowder and ammunition, loading a single round at a time. The Winchester allowed continuous shooting without interruption. Certain versions held up to 15 bullets. It enabled someone to empty a space, repel an attack, or pursue prey, all while keeping the firearm raised. The promotion was cutthroat, yet ingenious. Dubbed the gun that conquered the West. Advertisements featured tough cowboys and pioneers, independent and bold, gripping a Winchester. It turned into an emblem of U.S. growth, of inevitable fate, of advancement. Yet it also stood for mortality. Indigenous groups confronting repeating Winchesters, wielded by U.S. Army forces. Vast buffalo populations, dropping from 60 million to the brink of vanishing. Countless felled by commercial shooters using Winchesters. The Civil War, range conflicts, both bandits and sheriffs toted them. The firearm appeared ubiquitous, and wherever it showed up, fatalities followed. The Winchester Repeating Arms Company amassed vast wealth. By the 1860s, Oliver Winchester Hencote, the firm's originator, ranked among America's wealthiest individuals. His son, William Wart Winchester, took over the enterprise, and William wed Sarah Lockwood Party in 1862. At 23, Sarah was petite, just over 5 feet tall, with raven locks and intense gaze. She hailed from a prominent Connecticut lineage. Well-schooled. She spoke several tongues fluently and excelled at the piano. Acquaintances called her reflective, reserved, profoundly devout. She wed into riches beyond her wildest dreams. The Winchester residence in New Haven was impressive yet refined. Soirees, philanthropic gatherings, the sort of existence suited to newcomers with cash aspiring to mingle with established elites. Sarah fulfilled her part, the reserved, decorous spouse, the poised in-law. Still, a burden hung over it all. Talk of the rifle lingered in every discussion. Each gown, each light fixture, each staff member's pay, all traced back to that same origin, a device engineered for swift slaughter. Sarah kept her private thoughts on the matter silent in public, but those near her noted her unease, her probing inquiries, her inner turmoil over thriving amid bloodshed. Then came the burials. First, in 1866, Sarah bore a girl, Annie Parterdy Winchester. A robust infant, alert and tiny like her mom, Sarah invested her whole heart in her, all her affection, all her dreams, for a brighter tomorrow. Annie survived only 6 weeks. She succumbed to marasmus, a debilitating illness, probably from poor nutrition or milk intolerance. Physicians were powerless. Sarah cradled her child through the end. The sorrow was total. Sarah retreated inward. She quit social outings, ceased her music. Loved ones reported she scarcely uttered a word for months. William sought to soothe her, but the void lingered between them like a specter. No further children arrived. 15 years on, in 1881, William fell ill with tuberculosis. He declined gradually, hacking up blood, shedding pounds, dimming within the same stately home that once hosted lavish meals. Sarah tended to him, witnessing his passing. Now 43, she stood widowed, without issue, and as the lone beneficiary of a legacy forged from 50,000 lives lost. Chapter 3. The Medium and the Message. Sleep eluded Sarah. Night upon night in the New Haven estate, she tossed in chambers that seemed overly vast and hollow. The quiet bore down heavily. Each floorboard's groan echoed as steps. Every breeze rattling the panes hinted at intruders. Her circle fretted over her. Kin offered support. Yet such profound mourning defies courteous sympathy or earnest counsel. Sarah was sinking, grasping for any clue to why the divine had stripped her bare. Enter spiritualism into her world. During the 1880s, the nation fixated on the departed. Seances crowded living rooms nationwide. Psychics professed to bridge the gap, summoning echoes, tidings, evidence that demise wasn't final. It blended solace, showmanship, and raw yearning masked as ceremony. For souls like Sarah, learned, faithful, yet broken by bereavement, spiritualism provided what religion couldn't: a chance for connection, for insight, for catching her little one's whisper anew. Accounts differ by teller. Some recount a companion escorting Sarah to a psychic in Boston. Others maintain it unfolded in New Haven. A handful suggest Sarah pursued the seer solo, journeying covertly, loath to reveal to relatives the depths of her despair. Consensus holds on one point. The medium declared Sarah afflicted, not by divine will or cruel chance, but by the ghosts of all slain by Winchester rifles, thousands upon thousands, indigenous peoples, troops, colonists, marksmen, each unsettled, each vengeful, each homing in on the lineage that grew rich from their demise. According to the medium, the spirits had claimed her husband and daughter already, and they would claim her next unless she found a way to placate them. She needed to head westward, as distant from New Haven as possible. There she should purchase a home and keep expanding it endlessly. An incomplete structure would baffle the spirits, making them roam aimlessly and lose track of her. If the building ever halted, warned the medium, Sarah's life would end. Many would have brushed this off as the delusions of a fraud exploiting a mourning widow. Yet Sarah took it seriously. Whether she fully accepted the tale or just embraced a framework that channeled her sorrow into action, the outcome was identical. She resolved to act. That year, 1884, she sold her New Haven estate. Gathering her possessions, she bid farewell to her familiar world and caught a train, bound for the west. She kept her destination secret from most relatives, departing without fanfare. Her journey spanned the nation, crossing vast fields and grasslands, scaling peaks and traversing arid wastes, until she arrived in California, the frontier's end where the continent yielded to the ocean. In San Jose, amid blooming groves and misty mornings, she discovered an incomplete farmhouse. 8 rooms over 2 levels, unremarkable at first sight, merely a frame amid 40 acres of orchards. She acquired it promptly, then brought on builders. Construction kicked off in 1886 and continued without pause for the following 38 years. Chapter 4. The Ever-Expanding Home. The pounding of hammers echoed from sunrise. Builders showed up at the San Jose site to blueprints already laid out. At times, designs appeared on scraps of paper. Other times, the chief supervisor relayed spoken directions. Occasionally, there were no plans whatsoever, only commands to demolish the previous day's progress and begin anew. They toiled until dusk, when the evening shift took over. This deviated sharply from standard building practices. Typical projects stuck to daytime only, given the high costs of supplies and manpower, plus the hazards and waste of laboring by lantern or flame after dark. Efficiency meant little to Sarah, though. Continuity was everything. Expansion demanded round-the-clock effort, without exception. Employees noted an eerie pattern to the tasks. One day they might erect a full bedroom, complete with openings and entryway. By dawn, Sarah might redirect it elsewhere, prompting them to take it apart plank by plank and reassemble it 20 feet over. Another time, they'd fashion a stairway ascending 7 risers, pivoting at a platform, only to hit a solid overhead barrier. Questioning the foreman brought shrugs and confirmations of the directives. Doorways led to sheer walls. Cupboards measured a mere 1 inch inside, ornamental and impractical, like set pieces in a theater. A flue climbed 4 levels, yet halted below the roofline, exhausting into the loft rather than the sky. Panes sat flush with the floor, peering into adjacent spaces instead of the outdoors. The quirks defied reason, but wages arrived reliably. In that period of shaky jobs and postponed or partial pay, reliability trumped rationality. Sarah disbursed cash every week, punctually. She also provided sustenance, warm dishes from her cooks delivered to the scaffolds and sites. Through the 1890s financial slumps, which starved households and bred despair, this position transcended mere work. It sustained lives. The crew endured, hammers swinging on. Sarah stayed largely out of sight. She prowled the structure at irregular times, reviewing progress, jotting directives, altering schemes. Household staff observed she seldom rested beyond a handful of hours, often pacing the corridors solo through the wee hours, attuned to the home's creaking framework. A laborer once caught a fleeting sight of her, via a pane. A petite silhouette in dark attire, poised in a raw chamber, gazing at the surfaces as though deciphering invisible script. The residence swelled, from 8 chambers to 20, then 40. Extensions sprouted in all directions. Spires ascended, an opulent dance hall materialized, only to be walled up and abandoned. A glass-enclosed garden emerged, featuring imported European panes. The cooking area gained state-of-the-art fixtures for the era, but the peculiarities outpaced sensible additions. An upstairs portal swung out to nothingness above the yard. No railing, no steps, just a 15-foot plunge to hard stones. A minuscule flight of stairs, with treads a scant 2 inches tall, spiraled across 44 levels to gain barely over 9 feet. Twisting passages meandered in loops, apparently crafted to disorient anyone navigating from one wing to another. Local press began to take notice. They dubbed it the Winchester Mystery House, the sprawling estate where the widow employed teams of laborers around the clock on an inexplicable construction endeavor that baffled everyone beyond the entrance. Journalists attempted to question Sarah, but she turned them away. Security personnel were brought on to prevent intruders from entering the grounds. The entrance remained secured. The surrounding groves created a serene, verdant barrier, separating the roadway from the expanding labyrinth of spires and eaves. Yet the whispers seeped past, regardless, and they were on the verge of growing far more ominous. Chapter 5. The Seance Chamber. Nestled within the intricate layout was a space Sarah entered each evening. The household staff referred to it as the seance room. It was a modest, ordinary chamber concealed at the heart of the residence, isolated from any exterior boundaries. Sunlight never penetrated it. Accessing it required precise knowledge of the path, via a particular corridor, beyond a portal masked as an armoire, along a narrow corridor scarcely accommodating a single figure. Upon entering, the atmosphere seemed off-kilter. Along one side, 13 pegs were mounted. Their purpose remained a mystery. No garments were ever draped on them, no implements. Merely 13 wrought iron pegs aligned at regular intervals, suspending emptiness. It featured a solitary entry point, yet 3 possible ways out. One doorway returned you to the arrival route. A second revealed an unrelated corridor. The third concealed a sheer fall, a deceptive panel that, if swung open without caution, would plunge you into a basement area, 8 feet down. At the room's core stood an armoire. Legend held that Sarah stored garments and ritual implements within. The staff either withheld details on the items or lacked knowledge of them. A chime mechanism linked this chamber to Sarah's sleeping quarters. 2 signals. The first sounded at 2 a.m. The moment Sarah thought the boundary separating realms grew most fragile. Accounts vary on whether that chime called forth the apparitions or drew Sarah to commune with them. Certain tales mention a second chime, at exactly 2 a.m., to banish the entities, consisting of 13 tolls matching the wall's pegs. Late-night laborers insisted they detected the chimes, followed by pacing echoes in the corridors, and Sarah's subdued murmur as though conversing in an unfamiliar tongue. Yet nobody witnessed the activities within. Sarah offered no clarifications, neither affirming nor refuting the rituals. Clues emerged solely from longtime employees, who shared mere snippets rather than certainties. A maid allegedly described how Sarah lingered there for hours in isolation, at times enveloped in total obscurity, at others igniting tapers that flickered in unusual hues. Another recounted that Sarah obtained guidance in these gatherings, blueprints for building expansions, guidance on upcoming builds, cautions regarding hazardous areas. Whether Sarah genuinely thought she contacted the deceased, or if the chamber served merely as a sanctuary for solitary mourning, remains unclear. What remains certain is this: the space existed. It endures to this day. Modern visitors can explore it, although the pegs have vanished and the chime apparatus was severed long ago, and it's clear the residents evolved according to Sarah's nocturnal choices. Completed areas 1 week might be barricaded the following. Whole sections, laboriously erected over months, could abruptly be abandoned, portals boarded up, contents cleared out, suggesting some occurrence Sarah sought to suppress or isolate. The builders grew accustomed to avoiding inquiries. They adapted to revised schematics, no matter how those revisions clashed with prior directives. The consequence of refusal was dismissal, and nobody wished to forfeit that employment. The edifice expanded more rapidly then. 40 chambers swelled to 60 to 80. The framework stretched over the land like an organic entity, engulfing the groves and projecting extended shades. And amid it every evening at 2 a.m., a chime echoed through the shadows. Chapter 6. The Design of Disorientation. Entering the Winchester house around 1900 would have left you disoriented within mere steps. The main portal, assuming Sarah ever utilized one, unveiled a passage that forked into 3 branches right away. All routes appeared indistinguishable. Identical wall coverings, uniform illumination, identical timber flooring that groaned beneath your steps. Choose poorly, and you'd circle endlessly. In truth, certain passages curved back upon themselves, arranged so pursuers returned to their origin, under the illusion of greater distance covered. Some corridors terminated without warning. Rounding a bend in anticipation of continuation, you'd confront an empty barrier. No portal, no pane, merely patterned paper and hush. The flights of stairs proved even more bewildering. One ascended 44 risers to gain just 9 feet. Each tread a mere 2 inches high, so slight that your foot hardly rose. Sarah supposedly designed it thus for her rheumatism. The subtle slope eased the strain on her limbs compared to standard steps. Yet for newcomers unacquainted with the layout, It evoked an eerie sensation, as if ascending eternally without progress. A peculiar staircase ascended just 7 steps before veering sharply at a landing and colliding straight into the ceiling above. There was no entry to an attic, no concealed panel, just solid wood and plaster blocking the way. The builders had constructed it, and then paused, awaiting more directions that never arrived. So the staircase remained unfinished. Doors proliferated throughout the place. Later counts tallied around 2,000 in total. Certain ones swung open to reveal typical chambers. Others led squarely into solid walls. A handful even connected directly to yet another door. You'd grasp the knob, give it a shove, and come up against the reverse side of a sealed door, mere inches ahead. Up on the second level, one such door revealed sheer emptiness beyond. A sheer plunge straight down to the garden underneath. A 15-foot tumble onto unforgiving brick without any barrier or sign to caution you. Just the edge of the frame, and open void. What purpose could such a door serve? Theories abound. Perhaps it was intended as a snare for wandering ghosts who might pursue Sarah through the corridors, rush through the opening, and plummet to their doom. Alternatively, it might have been an oversight, a portal designed for a balcony that never materialized. Regardless, Sarah left it intact, much like all the other baffling features. Windows overlooked other windows. From inside one chamber, you'd peer through the glass and gaze right into another space across a slim courtyard. No seclusion, no glimpse of the outdoors. Merely pain reflecting pain. Certain windows sat right at floor height. Stepping into a room, you might almost stumble upon a sheet of glass embedded level with the planks, peering downward to the cellar or upward to the beams based on your level in the building. The ballroom stood out as the most enigmatic area, opulent and elegant with its intricate parquet flooring and lavish stained glass panes valued at thousands. It housed 2 grand pipe organs. Sarah cherished music and was said to perform solo in the quiet hours of night. The space could accommodate a crowd of 100. Yet she hosted no gatherings, extended no invitations. The hall was erected, equipped, and promptly forsaken. Staff recalled her passing through it occasionally in the dead of night, her hand gliding along the surfaces, though she avoided touching the organs if others were present. The ballroom's stained glass motifs depicted spider webs, elaborate, captivating patterns of silk threads shimmering with dew at dawn. Spider motifs recurred all over the residence, etched into the carvings, inlaid in the tiles, interlaced in the metalwork. Sarah apparently viewed spiders as bearers of fortune, ensnaring malevolent entities, much like they caught insects. Thus, she incorporated their likenesses everywhere, weaving a network from timber, panes, and masonry. Yet this network extended beyond ornamentation. The mansion had morphed into a labyrinthine snare itself, corridors coiling like threads, chambers stacked haphazardly, paths looping in on themselves so that even the original builders occasionally lost their bearings. By 1906, the Winchester house sprawled across more than 100 rooms, reaching 7 stories at its peak. Spires jutted skyward over the surrounding groves. Prominent from the nearby roads, it ranked as California's grandest private home, a sprawling estate to match those of tycoons in rail and mining. Then, on April 18th at 5:12 a.m., the ground trembled. Chapter 7. The quake that altered it all. The tremors struck abruptly. Up in San Francisco, roughly 60 miles northward, devastation reigned supreme. Structures crumbled, blazes ignited. Over 3,000 lives ended in moments. The massive 1906 earthquake, clocking in at magnitude 7.9, etched itself as one of the nation's most lethal catastrophes. San Jose endured its share as well. At the Winchester house, the earth surged like ocean swells. Chimneys fractured and tumbled. Panes exploded. The 7-story spire, the estate's loftiest feature, creaked and lurched before succumbing. Enormous masses of lumber and masonry plunged through successive levels, smashing chamber after chamber, until the wreckage piled into a jumble of fractured beams and shards. Powdered dust clouded the passages. The whole edifice groaned as though on the verge of total ruin. Sarah was within its walls. She'd been resting in a bedchamber high up. Reports vary on the precise spot, since she customarily shifted her sleeping area every few weeks, never lingering long in one. As the jolts began, she aimed for the nearest doorframe. Classic protocol in a quake. Seek shelter there, hold steady. But the door refused to budge. The building had twisted. The surround had buckled. She shoved and tugged, slamming into the barrier with all her might. To no avail. She found herself confined, isolated amid the clamor of the fracturing structure. Household help caught her cries. They seized implements and levers, battled past corridors clogged with fallen debris, and located the stuck entrance. It required almost an hour of effort to wrench it free. Once they extracted Sarah, she appeared rattled, yet unscathed, at least bodily. Internally, though, a fracture had formed. She toured the wrecked interior without a word. She beheld the toppled tower. The splintered glass, the spaces entombed in debris. Partitions rent apart to bear the underlying framework of joists and supports. The crew anticipated that she would call for fixes, demand the tower's reconstruction, and revive the ruined areas. But Sarah instructed them to barricade it instead. The whole front portion of the mansion, 30 rooms encompassing the tower and primary doorway, was shut away. Entrances got hammered closed. Passages were obstructed with pieces of furniture and planks. From that point on, Sarah avoided those spaces entirely. She offered no reasons, though the household staff felt they grasped the motive. To Sarah, the quake served as a sign, a caution from the otherworldly. She had somehow offended them, constructed improperly, or drawn unwelcome scrutiny. That tower's downfall wasn't mere chance. It signified retribution. Thus, she enclosed the destruction, akin to bandaging an injury, preserving it untouched by time, while redirecting the building efforts to different sections of the estate, as though initiating a fresh attempt to placate entities capable of rattling the ground. The expansion persisted, yet it shifted in nature. Prior to the tremor, the residents pulsed with a wild vitality. Odd, certainly, yet driven by bold intent. Spires climbing toward the heavens, lavish chambers, an impression that Sarah was forging a colossal endeavor, regardless of its unclear purpose. Post-quake, the structure folded upon itself. Fresh areas shrank in size, corridors tightened. The labor emphasized lateral extensions over upward growth, appendages stretching outward across the grounds in place of ascending toward the clouds. It seemed Sarah had lost faith in elevation, preferring to hug the soil. She grew increasingly withdrawn as well. In the time before 1906, Sarah would sometimes engage directly with the laborers, deliver directives face-to-face, and tour completed areas to evaluate the craftsmanship. Following the quake, she withdrew almost completely. Entire days elapsed without a glimpse of her. Orders arrived via go-betweens. Wages materialized in sealed packets. The overseer directed the teams. The domestic head overseen the help. Sarah glided through her domain like a specter. Locals mentioned spotting illuminations in the panes during odd times. A lone taper's glow drifting between chambers, levels above and below, suggesting a quest for some vanished item. The seance chamber's chime continued tolling at 2 a.m. Laborers still caught echoes of steps, but the atmosphere carried a deeper weight. A feeling that the dwelling bore a stigma, that the ruin went beyond mere framework harm. It confirmed her fears and showed that endless construction could never suffice. Chapter 8. The laborers who remained. Most folks might have walked away. The tremor had almost claimed their boss's life. The place formed an ever more perplexing labyrinth. The tasks repeated endlessly, oddly, without apparent end. Erect a partition, dismantle it, reassemble elsewhere. Yet the men stuck around, not due to faith in apparitions or insight into Sarah's grand design. They endured for a more basic reason, one far more tangible in their lives: devotion forged through reliable compensation and unexpected generosity. Sarah Winchester compensated more generously than nearly any other in the region. A proficient woodworker might earn $2 daily on ranches or civic structures. She offered $3 or higher for expert tasks, and she disbursed it weekly in currency, punctually. No postponements, no pretexts. No subtle pay deductions, a frequent tactic back then, as bosses routinely trimmed or pocketed earnings on flimsy grounds. She nourished them too. At midday each day, the cooking team served steaming repasts, not remnants or cast-offs, but hearty servings. Seared meats, produce, warm loaves brewed Java. Winter brought stews. Summer supplied chilled citrus drinks and produce from the groves. For these workers, who frequently returned to meager suppers, this mattered greatly. Several later recalled that the noontime fare at the Winchester estate outshone their weekly meals. More than salary and sustenance, she provided an uncommon steadiness. The 1890s brought waves of financial slumps. Financial institutions crumbled. Ventures folded. Building gigs vanished for extended spells, plunging households into want. Yet the Winchester mansion pressed on amid crises, downturns, and harsh seasons when other ventures halted. Sarah's project never paused. Employees toiled there for 5 years, 10, even 15. Some introduced their grown boys to wield tools alongside them, dads and offspring together on pointless risers and portals leading to barriers. They puzzled over the scheme's aim, but grasped the remuneration's value. In a time of harsh fiscal volatility, that sufficed. A craftsman by the name of John Hansen shared with a journalist years later how the Winchester gig preserved his household. His spouse fell ill, debts for care mounted. Typical bosses would have dismissed him. An ailing kin implied absences, divided focus, undependability. Sarah chose otherwise. She discreetly boosted his earnings and directed the supervisor to release him early when family called. No drawn-out lectures were necessary. Just a quiet nod to the fact that existence could be tough. And folks deserved some leeway to handle their struggles. Hansen labored on the property for a full 18 years. Tales like his abounded. There was the worker whose kid required an operation. Sarah covered the costs. Or the plasterer who shattered his arm and sat idle for 2 months. Sarah paid his wages regardless. Then the aging handyman, hardly able to scale ladders any longer. Sarah reassigned him to easier tasks rather than dismissing him. This wasn't some showy philanthropy for the spotlight. Sarah never boasted about her generosity or tipped off the press. She just looked after those who maintained her home. In gratitude, the staff watched out for her. When journalists prowled nearby, probing with inquiries or attempting to sneak peeks through panes or scale barriers for a look at the supposed deranged widow, the employees shooed them off. When locals whispered about eerie glows and chimes echoing at midnight, the crew dismissed the chatter and held their tongues. They constructed her labyrinth. They adhered to her baffling directives, and they guarded her confidences. Plenty of them probably viewed her as quirky, perhaps disturbed. Yet she was their quirky, troubled boss, and she valued them more than any other employer ever had. So if Sarah requested a stairway leading to nothing, they erected it. If she wanted a doorway embedded in the ground, they fitted it. And if she ordered them to wall up 30 chambers and vow silence about the contents within, they did so, without a murmur. By 1910, the residence had expanded to more than 160 rooms, reaching its maximum scale, an expansive, bewildering edifice that sustained scores of workers and perplexed all onlookers. Yet to the crew who assembled it, the Winchester house held no enigma. It was employment, solid employment. And in an era short on such opportunities, that sufficed. Chapter 9. The widow the world wanted to see. The press couldn't ignore her. By 1910, Sarah Winchester embodied the perfect sensational tale that boosted circulation. An isolated widow, immense wealth, a residence defying logic and topping it off. Whispers of phantoms, maledictions, and nocturnal ceremonies. The San Francisco Call published the initial big piece, titled Mystery House of Santa Clara Valley. The lead proclaimed, quote underscore zero, underscore it referenced, barricaded spaces, perpetual building work, and laborers murmuring about chimes tolling at 2 a.m. The account proliferated. Additional outlets adopted it, amplifying elements and tossing in particulars that might have been fabricated. One asserted Sarah always donned a veil, concealing her features from the help. Another alleged she dined at a table for 13, with 12 vacant seats reserved for the specters she thought dined alongside her. A further one noted she'd invested over $5 million in the place, a fortune then, akin to about $150 million now, and planned to keep expanding indefinitely. Sarah offered no rebuttals, no clarifications, no statements to the media. Her reticence fueled the fire for better or worse, depending on the angle. Without contradiction, the narratives escalated into absurdity. Every iteration piled on fresh embellishments. The séance space morphed into a den of terrors. The aimless staircase symbolized insanity. The ongoing work itself signaled a lady ensnared in fantasy, erecting feverishly to evade mortality. The masses devoured it. This was the Gilded Age ebbing into the Progressive Era. The nation fixated on the ultra-wealthy and the bizarre, tycoons crafting opulent estates, oddballs squandering inheritances on enigmas. And along came Sarah Winchester, a lady whose riches rivaled minor nations, lavishing it on a dwelling crafted to bewilder and unsettle. She turned into a parody, the deranged widow, the spectral dame, the one conversing with the departed. But the parody missed the mark. True, Sarah shunned society. True, she embraced spiritualism. But so did countless Americans, from esteemed scholars and writers to influential politicians. Seances were routine. Psychics were respectable. The notion of communing with the afterlife wasn't outlandish, it was trendy. And yes, the house was peculiar. But Sarah wasn't addled. She oversaw grand property, directed numerous employees, navigated intricate finances, exchanged letters with kin, and upheld orchards yielding fruit for market sale. She remained capable, methodical, authoritative. The house's quirks weren't wholly capricious. Plenty boasted sensible reasons. The low-rising stairs eased her arthritic joints. The abundance of sleeping quarters allowed her to shift spots often, a habit among those enduring persistent aches in search of restful beds. The diminutive entrances and modest heights could suit a petite frame, just over 5 feet. Full-scale portals might have loomed awkwardly large. Even the pointless doors had logic. Blueprints evolved over time. Extensions and modifications kept piling up. Former entrances turned redundant, yet they remained untouched instead of being sealed away. This wasn't pure lunacy. It reflected the chaotic truth of non-stop construction over many years, lacking any overarching blueprint. However, the press craved sensational tales over sensible accounts. They sought intrigue, terror, a narrative that reinforced the notion folks already held. Excessive wealth, overwhelming sorrow, and prolonged solitude could push anyone toward madness. That's the tale they spun. According to the newspapers, Sarah Winchester was tormented by spirits. Not in a figurative sense, but truly pursued by the phantoms of countless souls, erecting a mansion to confine them, her sanity slipping away with each new chamber. The reality, though, was more subdued and heartbreaking. Sarah had become a bereaved spouse, having buried her sole daughter and her partner within a span of 15 years. She inherited a vast wealth linked to bloodshed she hadn't inflicted herself, but reaped benefits from daily. Relocating nationwide to flee the burden of that legacy, she discovered an endeavor, unconventional, sure, but meaningful, that channeled her mourning into form. She provided jobs for others. She created an enormous, bizarre edifice that was wholly hers. And she accomplished this under the distant gaze of society, which scrutinized her intentions and transformed her into a flesh-and-blood legend of the supernatural. Come 1915, Sarah had entered her 70s. Building efforts had eased off, though they never fully ceased, just tapered. The residence attained its maximum scale, boasting 160 rooms. A vast testament to an enigma the public could never grasp. Sarah, weary and growing frailer, continued to roam the passages, solo under cover of night. Chapter 10. The Final Chambers. Sarah's grip trembled when she clutched a writing instrument. Her arthritis had intensified. The very ailment that had influenced the home's design. Those short steps, those compact spaces now hindered her ability to jot down directives, draft designs, or perform the tasks that had occupied almost 40 years of her existence. She progressed more deliberately along the corridors. Household staff caught the sound of her walking stick striking the timber floors after dark, a soft cadence reverberating along the deserted halls. Tap, 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 then a halt, followed by steps once more as she shifted between spaces, verifying secures, trying handles. She persisted in switching sleeping quarters often, but it stemmed no longer from unease. It was required. Certain evenings her limbs ached excessively to navigate stairs. On other occasions, she preferred the lower level, nearer to the help. Should she tumble or summon aid unheard? The building teams observed the shift as well. Directives arrived sporadically. Periods elapsed without fresh blueprints, alterations, or commands to dismantle and reconstruct. The laborers focused on upkeep of the current structure, mending shingles, refreshing paint, mending shattered panes. Yet the growth had basically halted. By 1920, the property appeared unchanged from 1915. Identical room count, identical expansive layout over the grounds. The pounding that locals had endured for 35 years faded to sporadic, then infrequent, then sporadic. Sarah was releasing her hold. She devoted additional hours to the sunroom, the space featuring ornate glass panes and a modest water feature. Attendants noted her preference for lingering there during daytime when sunlight filtered through the hues, casting dynamic designs across the flooring. She spoke little these days. She merely perched and observed the play of light. The spirit consultation chamber's chime continued tolling at 2 a.m., though not nightly. Some stretches passed in quiet for a week. Then it would sound anew, 13 peals slicing the gloom, signaling to the employees that Sarah remained in pursuit of whatever quest had driven her for so long. Insights, absolution, connection with the child and spouse long departed, or perhaps merely tranquility. A brief respite amid a dwelling crafted to contain turmoil. Her niece, Frances Marriott, dropped by now and then. Frances ranked among the scant relatives with whom Sarah maintained ties. The encounters were short and decorous. Tea in the sunroom, courteous exchanges. Sarah refrained from displaying the entire abode to Frances, avoided guiding her via the labyrinth, omitted detailing the spaces or their purposes. She extended tea and light chatter, then withdrew upon fatigue. Frances would recall afterward that Sarah appeared diminished with each call, beyond the physical shrinkage from years and sickness, rendering her a delicate avian form, but lessened in aura, as though the mansion had ballooned to engulf her, leaving only a resonance drifting its passages. In the early days of September 1922, Sarah relocated her sleeping area for the ultimate occasion. She selected a modest ground-level chamber, straightforward bare surfaces, one pane overlooking the grounds, devoid of peculiarities, no concealed entries or secret routes, just a serene spot for an elderly lady to repose. She requested the household to deliver her bedding, a seat, and a petite stand. No more. Following years of populating the estate with furnishings, items, and structural quirks, Sarah's concluding space was nearly bare. That evening of September 4th, she retired as per routine. The staff looked in on her one last time before heading to their own beds. She remained alert, propped up in her chair, gazing toward the moonlit grove beyond the window. Sometime before the sun rose, she slipped away peacefully in her sleep. There were no tolling bells, no tremors rattling the structure, no eerie omens signaling her departure. Simply an elderly woman of 83, solitary in the chamber she had crafted herself, fading silently into the darkness. Come morning, the attendants discovered her. They informed Frances right away. The overseer passed the word to the crew. By midday, word of the passing rippled across San Jose. Sarah Winchester had departed this world, and for the first time in 38 years, the Winchester residence fell into utter, profound quiet. No echoes of hammers, no whir of saws, no padding of feet along the corridors. The building work had ceased, not from any sense of completion. It could never truly be finished, but because the sole individual who grasped its purpose or the necessity behind its creation was no more. Chapter 11. What the Heirs Found. Frances Marriott lingered in the grand entryway, gazing in disbelief. Over the years she had come to see her aunt many times, yet Sarah had always dictated the scope of those stays. Afternoon tea amid the glass-enclosed plants, strolls amid the blooms, but never a full walk-through, never any insights, and absolutely no permission to roam freely through the entire estate. With Sarah now past, Frances, serving as the estate's administrator, faced the daunting task of cataloging it all. She assembled a group: attorneys, financial experts, valuers, professionals, armed with notepads and measuring tools, tasked with listing every item and assessing the site's worth. They became disoriented from the outset. Passages meandered unpredictably. Openings connected to surprising spots. Flights of steps materialized in illogical positions. One evaluator swung open what seemed a storage nook, only to peer down a 40-foot plunge to the lower level. Another wandered for 20 minutes in search of the front door, only to arrive at the uppermost story by mistake. Frances enlisted a neighborhood woodworker, once employed on the property, to lead the way. Even he faltered. Chambers he had assembled 15 years prior now stood blocked or rearranged. Corridors he recalled vividly had been bricked up. The residence had transformed so repeatedly and radically that nobody, not even its original builders, could traverse it with confidence. The assessment dragged on for weeks, encompassing 160 chambers, some outfitted with pieces, others barren. A handful barricaded, their furnishings preserved intact from the earthquake of 196. 40 sets of stairs, 10,000 panes of glass. The group quit tallying precisely and approximated 2,000 portals. 47 hearths, 17 flues, most useless, halting before the eaves or exhausting into sealed areas. The sheer scale astonished them, yet the holdings proved even more peculiar. In a single space, they uncovered scores of matching porcelain ensembles, boxed and unused. Elsewhere, countless flasks of premium vintages lay shrouded in grime. It appeared Sarah had procured goods in vast quantities, then overlooked them or skipped the unpacking altogether. Wardrobes brimmed with fabric lengths, sheaves of wall coverings piled to the rafters, supplies sufficient for erecting yet another dwelling. Boards, fasteners, sheets of glass, all tucked away in various nooks of the grand home, as though Sarah had stockpiled for endless future expansions. Yet personal writings were scarce, no missives exchanged, no daily logs, no accounts shedding light on her intentions or logic. Just a handful of kinfolk notes neatly organized, some ledgers of expenditures, but nothing unveiling Sarah's private thoughts, nothing clarifying the why behind it all. The spirit summoning chamber offered no revelations. Its 13 pegs hung bare. The wardrobe contained the garments the help had described, but no mystical tomes, no ritual implements, no odd relics, merely textiles and voids. Frances would later share with journalists her expectation of uncovering clues within the walls, perhaps a paper trail to unravel the prolonged labor, the eccentric layout, the decisions that defied understanding. She discovered zilch. Instead, she unearthed traces of another side. Invoices for Sarah's gifts to causes, undisclosed gifts to medical centers, homes for the young and bereft, aid for calamity victims. She had disbursed considerable fortunes over time, all without fanfare. Payroll sheets named longtime employees, those tied to the grounds for 10, 20, or even 30 years. Laborers who had supported households on her payroll. One entry noted a retirement stipend for an aging handyman, unable to work further. Sarah had sustained it regardless. Notes from household staff seeking leave for ailing loved ones met with her consistent approvals, always compensated. Frances started perceiving a fresh portrait, not of an unhinged soul or a fearful shut-in, but of a figure bearing sorrow and remorse in a manner that resonated with her alone, baffling as it was to others. Even so, the manner posed a challenge, enormous in scope. Costly to upkeep, unsellable as a home. Who could envision dwelling in a maze of pointless risers and barriers where entrances met solid surfaces? The contents went under the hammer. Belongings filling 5 haulage vehicles fetched at auction to settle inheritance levies and obligations. It required days to clear out the spaces. All that was left stood as the house proper, now vacant and hushed, merely a framework of timber, panes, and masonry, devoid of any evident function. Frances had no idea how to handle it, so she followed the path many Americans took in the 1920s, toward enigmas they couldn't grasp. She converted it into a visitor draw. Chapter 12. The Haunted Attraction. The entrance swung wide for sightseers in 1923. Just shy of 1 year following Sarah's passing, the Winchester house turned profitable. 5 months went into readying it. Scrub the chambers, sweep away the rubble, recruit docents, produce pamphlets, and above all craft the narrative to share. Frances might have opted for candor. She could have showcased the dwelling as a structural oddity, a tribute to sorrow, a prosperous widow's multi-decade endeavor, that spurned standard layouts yet displayed exquisite workmanship and offered steady jobs amid turbulent eras. Yet straightforwardness wouldn't draw crowds. Promotion veered toward dread. Quote 2, the promotions dubbed it. Explore the estate erected by a lady tormented by phantoms slain by Winchester firearms. Docents received directives to highlight the eerie, the hex, the spirit sessions, the nocturnal chimes. They informed guests that Sarah constructed to baffle malevolent entities, that she avoided repeating a sleeping quarters lest they locate her, that laborers caught murmurs in deserted corridors and glimpsed silhouettes gliding past barriers, portions rooted in reality. The signals did toll. Building persisted, without pause. Sarah shifted her sleeping areas often, though the spin was outright spectral yarn. Each quirky building element morphed into proof of otherworldly conviction instead of joint pain, altered blueprints, or mere quirkiness. Crowds adored it. Thousands arrived that debut year. Outings from San Francisco brought families. Vacationers crossing California slotted it into their plans. Neighborhood youth challenged one another to brave the walk, equally eager for a spectral sighting and relieved if none appeared. Docents honed a routine. They ushered parties via the puzzle, spotlighting the pointless steps, the portal revealing a sheer fall. The pains aligned with pains. They hushed tones in the summoning chamber and invariably murmured that certain guests sensed chilly patches or caught odd noises. Did these tales hold water? Did folks truly encounter ghostly happenings? A few insisted so. One lady described a palm pressing her in a barren passage. A gentleman noted paces trailing him across the glass house. Youngsters claimed glimpses of visages in the colored panes that faded under straight gaze. Doubters offered plainer rationales. Aged structures groan, breezes spawn icy zones. Tinted glass warps raised to mimic profiles. Expectation wields strong influence. Prime a spot as spectral, and brains hunt confirmation. Yet veracity counted less than the thrill. Visitors craved faith in it. They yearned for the Winchester house to teem with spirits, for that would validate Sarah's dread. It would affirm the affliction's existence. It would imbue the years of erection with mystic intent, beyond mere melancholy. The estate rose as a prime California wayside draw. It graced guidebooks. Souvenirs at the store bore images of the facade, veiled in mist, tagged ___, quote _3, ___, Sarah's legacy shifted. Alive, she stayed secluded, misconstrued, sometimes sympathized with. Deceased, she turned mythic. The deranged spouse, the figure striving to erect escape from doom, only to falter. But had she truly faltered? Sarah reached 83, outlasting her spouse and numerous peers. She endured tuberculosis waves, the 1906 quake, the Spanish flu scourge. She slipped away calmly in slumber on a mattress she'd selected within a structure she'd molded to the finest points. Should the affliction dictate demise upon halting work, she'd shattered it already. Work had tapered for years pre-death and ceased outright in her last days, with no otherworldly fallout. No wrathful apparitions, no fateful clash, just years and organic waning. But such a take wouldn't move admissions. Thus docents stuck to the phantom fable. They stressed terror and lunacy above mourning and resolve. They cast Sarah as prey to ethereal powers, not a lady devising an atypical balm for devastating bereavement. Years rolled by. Ownership swapped hands repeatedly. Successive proprietors upheld the spectral saga, layering flourishes, updating the route, but holding fast to the central theme. This site bears a blight, and its architect fled phantoms. Into the 1970s and 80s, the Winchester house embedded in occult lore. Spectral pursuit programs spotlighted it. Seers professed sensing intense, ethereal vibes. Publications on America's haunted landmarks frequently devoted sections to Sarah Winchester and her sprawling residence. The genuine account, subtle, intricate, and deeply personal, lay overshadowed by fabricated enigmas. Lately, however, perspectives have evolved. Scholars have delved deeper into Sarah's background, examining her philanthropy, her approach to staff, and the sensible explanations for architectural elements once deemed otherworldly. A fresh narrative has surfaced, one that acknowledges the oddities without dismissing them, portraying the estate not as a spectral dwelling but as a tribute to sorrow, and maybe, in its peculiar fashion, to resilience. Chapter 13. The True Nature of Sarah's Creation. Assessing Sarah's property required 6 weeks. Frances Marriott and her group itemized everything systematically, from one chamber to the next: furnishings, dishware, apparel, building supplies. Yet the ledgers of finances revealed more insight than the structure alone. Sarah maintained a steady workforce of about 22 individuals from 1886, right up to her passing. Wage logs indicated pay exceeding local standards. A woodworker, receiving $2 daily at other sites, got $3 at the Winchester property. Experts in their trades commanded higher sums still. The ledgers also documented generous giving: unidentified gifts to hospitals in San Jose, support for orphanages, aid to those affected by earthquakes and fires. These sums were considerable, thousands annually, translating to hundreds of thousands in modern terms. Healthcare costs cropped up often, extending beyond Sarah to her employees. One disbursement went to a physician for mending a carpenter's damaged hand. Another funded an operation for a worker's youngster. Notes reflected ongoing pay amid sickness or healing periods. A particular notation drew attention: a regular stipend to an aging custodian, no longer able to work. This lasted 3 years until he passed away, with Sarah sustaining his income, even without services rendered. Such documentation didn't suggest derangement. Instead, it illustrated an owner who valued her workforce as more than mere expendable expense. Scrutinizing the mansion revealed comparable practicality. The low-rise steps weren't eerie inventions. They eased mobility amid crippling arthritis. Health files verified Sarah's long-term joint agony, which intensified through the years. Regular stairways would have proven arduous, if not unattainable, for her ascent. The array of sleeping quarters suited a person enduring persistent discomfort, enabling shifts to better-rested spots, evasion of chilly airs, or proximity to lower-level amenities during tougher mobility spells. Numerous apparent dead-end portals were merely outdated access points. Blueprints evolved, expansions occurred, prior passages turned redundant, yet remained intact in a dwelling perpetually in flux, avoiding the need to seal them amid ongoing modifications. That wasn't lunacy. It was commonplace. Panes overlooking panes introduced illumination to inner passages that would otherwise stay dim. The residence expanded so vastly that countless halls lacked outer boundaries. Internal glazing addressed that issue effectively. The seance chamber, too, boasted logical features. Several doorways offered swift evacuation amid blazes, a valid worry given gas lamps and flammable timber in that time. Those 13 hooks probably secured implements, fasteners, or daily necessities. The signaling mechanism let Sarah summon attendants without raising her voice or traversing great distances. This doesn't imply Sarah lacked faith. Documentation confirms her visits to spiritualist congregations. Correspondence alludes to her conviction in life beyond death. The rituals probably occurred. Still, spiritualism during the 1880s and 90s wasn't marginal. It permeated society. Countless Americans joined such gatherings. Researchers probed psychics. Even chief executives, sought mediums' counsel. Sarah's convictions didn't signal madness. They aligned with a prevailing spiritual movement of her period. The building efforts fulfilled multiple roles simultaneously. They sustained jobs amid financial turbulence. The 1890s brought repeated economic crises, wiping out building opportunities and leaving households in want. Yet the Winchester endeavor persisted, offering reliable employment and compensation when such stability was rare. For Sarah, it provided purpose, a venture to orchestrate, oversee, and direct. In her social sphere, bereaved women typically retreated to subdued home life with limited paths forward. Sarah, by contrast, directed a massive building initiative for almost 40 years, yielding an enduring legacy. Regardless of her drives, whether mourning, remorse, faith, or mere quirk, the outcome endures over a century later. A site that has supported thousands through tourism and attracted multitudes of guests. The fortune stemmed from the Winchester rifle's lethal legacy, a reality unaltered. But Sarah channeled those funds into livelihoods, benevolence, and design. She converted familial riches into paychecks and artistry. Whether such actions constitute redemption remains a personal judgment for each viewer to ponder. The recorded facts, however, are more straightforward. An affluent widow devoted 38 years to constructing a residence that aligned with her vision, regardless of its bafflement to others. She compensated workers equitably, donated lavishly, and fashioned an enduring legacy that has surpassed her lifespan by over a century. The structure endures in the present, not due to hexes or specters, but owing to choices Sarah Winchester made regarding her time and resources. These choices proved unconventional, at times unfathomable, yet they belonged entirely to her, transforming sorrow and remorse into timber, panes, and 60 chambers that continue to bewilder and captivate every visitor who explores them. Chapter 14. The House That Refuses to Die. The Winchester House ought to have been razed many decades back. From a pragmatic standpoint, preserving it defied reason. Oversized for upkeep, eccentric for resale, prohibitively costly to warm, fix, or adapt for contemporary needs. Following Sarah's passing, the sensible path would have involved dismantling it, carving up the property, and marketing the parcels. Yet, an unseen force prevented that outcome. Perhaps it stemmed from the building's bold defiance. Its very existence seemed a testament to unyielding determination. A solitary woman, operating sans an official blueprint, had produced a marvel comparable to the grand estates of tycoons who enlisted renowned designers and vast labor forces. Or perhaps the tale itself held sway. Into the 1920s, the mythos had solidified. The malediction, the phantoms, the ceaseless construction. That storyline carried worth, not academic but societal and amusement-driven. Thus the estate persisted, evolving across the years. During the 1960s, proprietorship transitioned. Fresh overseers revamped the excursions, installed electrical illumination, and fortified the edifice. The harm from the 1906 earthquake received belated restoration. Sealed chambers from Sarah's era were unsealed, granting sightseers entry to areas untouched for 60 years. The storyline evolved subtly, diminished emphasis on the deranged widow, amplified on the enigma of its design. Docents began highlighting Sarah's sharp mind, her entrepreneurial savvy, her fair dealings with staff. Spectral yarns endured, yet they were tempered by verifiable details. Through the 1980s and 1990s, enthusiasts of the occult arrived equipped with gear, devices for detecting electromagnetic fields, thermal imaging tools, sound capture units seeking anomalous voices. They overnighted within the walls, noted chilly zones and odd noises, and proclaimed it authentically spectral. Counter-arguments emerged from others. Building specialists noted how aged lumber swells and shrinks, yielding cracks and creaks. Scientists of physical laws explained temperature fluctuations from drafts in an under-insulated grand home. Mental health experts discussed suggestion's influence and how preconceptions mold perceptions and auditory experiences. The property turned into a litmus test for convictions. Visitors perceived what they sought. The faithful uncovered signs of otherworldly presences. Doubters uncovered principles of natural science. Scholars uncovered traces of mourning. Designers uncovered ways sorrow found expression in form. Each perspective likely held its truth. In 2016, a motion picture titled Winchester debuted, featuring Helen Mirren portraying Sarah. It delved deeply into terror, with startling frights, ethereal figures, and Sarah depicted as a tormented clairvoyant confronting malevolent powers. The production strayed far from factual accuracy, fabricating figures and occurrences, recasting Sarah's subdued cyclical existence into a spectral adventure. Experts in history decried it. Still, the cinema exposed Sarah's narrative to fresh audiences. Countless individuals unfamiliar with the Winchester house now recognized the legacy. Admissions at the site surged. The domicile had evolved into an entity Sarah never envisioned, a protagonist in its narrative, a locale thriving equally in fancy and reality. Now more than a century post Sarah's demise, the Winchester Mystery House endures as a premier draw for California sightseers. Hundreds of thousands traverse it annually. They navigate the passages, ascend the pointless flights of stairs, pause in the séance chamber, and reflect. Excursions vary in style today. Basic ones emphasize the building's features and eerie tales. Themed versions delve into the cellar, the loft, and restricted zones. Insider glimpses reveal the engineering feats, the upkeep labors, the ongoing toil to sustain a 140-year-old manor. Evening glow tours cater to thrill-seekers craving immersion in the uncanny, traversing shadowed halls lit solely by a focused ray, attuned to each snap and sigh, sensing every whisper of air. In such ambiance, spectral presences feel plausible. Archival journeys spotlight Sarah's biography, The Laborers, and her epic. They confront the loss, the mysticism, and the tangled ties of fortune and remorse. The merchandise outlet offers an array from scholarly tomes on Gilded Age building to tools for spirit detection. Replicas of Winchester rifles are displayed alongside dolls modeled after Sarah Winchester. Blends of history and myth, reality and imagination all intertwine in an environment that's long defied straightforward classification. Even today, the house continues to astonish those who believe they've grasped its essence. Back in 2016, workers uncovered a chamber sealed away since Sarah's era, long since erased from memory. Hidden behind a walled barrier, it had stayed out of sight for almost 100 years. Within lay Victorian-era wallpaper, a basin, and a hearth, all immaculate and undisturbed. This find underscored how the residence still harbors enigmas with areas crafted by Sarah that elude even the daily staff's complete knowledge. Additional chambers could lurk undetected. Further corridors might remain blocked. Other decisions from Sarah await discovery or comprehension. The Winchester house defies complete understanding. It rejects simplicity. It endures, much like the woman behind its creation. Chapter 15. The Legacy in Wooden Glass. The Winchester house features in over 50 volumes on haunted locales across America. Ghost hunters have captured numerous TV segments within its confines. Podcasts unravel the tale of its supposed curse. Online creators scrutinize its layout and pursue chills using thermal imaging devices. The estate has evolved into a staple of popular culture, continually examined, debated, and reshaped by successive waves of enthusiasts. Yet, interpretations of it evolve with the times. During the 1920s and 30s, Portrayals cast Sarah as a deranged figure. Press accounts emphasized madness and fixation. The bereaved widow, propelled into fantasy by sorrow and remorse. Such depictions mirrored the period's attitudes toward affluent, non-traditional women, either guided by male kin or deemed unreliable. Come the 1960s and 70s, the storyline gained nuance. Sarah emerged as a poignant character, rather than merely unhinged. Emphasis moved to her bereavements, the lost daughter, the deceased spouse, the burden of the firearms wealth. She was still depicted as psychologically troubled, yet now with added compassion. The 1980s ushered in a surge of interest in the occult. Abruptly, Sarah appeared as a spiritualist, attuned to otherworldly entities. The property shifted, from emblem of instability to tangible testament to the ethereal. Adherents cited its design features as evidence that ghostly influences were embedded in the structure itself. In more modern times, the narrative has transformed once more. Scholars of history and gender studies have delved deeply into Sarah's existence. They uncovered a capable individual handling intricate account, overseeing major building endeavors and sustaining enterprise functions for almost 40 years. Ledgers of wages, agreements, and letters reveal methodical planning and reliability, far from the disorder linked to the stereotypical, frenzied widow. Contemporary views still note her mourning and interest in the occult, while highlighting her autonomy. Her selections, though unconventional, were intentional. The residence wasn't mere haphazard building from a bewildered psyche. It represented a prolonged initiative carried out with precise funding and ongoing oversight. Even the renowned curse narrative faces re-evaluation. No records from Sarah's lifetime quote her affirming faith in such a hex. The account of the Boston psychic emerges in 1920s publications post-mortem when she couldn't verify or refute it. It could hold truth, or it might be an embellished yarn to heighten the allure of initial guided visits. Undeniable, however, are the figures and core details. Sarah received about $20 million upon inheritance in 1881, equivalent to roughly $500 million now. She relocated to California and constructed nearly non-stop for 38 years. She paid her crew rates exceeding standard. She contributed to causes. She reached 83 and passed quietly during slumber. The property boasts 160 rooms, approximately 40 sets of stairs, and design quirks that remain puzzling to pinpoint definitively. The seance chamber exists. The perpetual building phase was factual. These elements appear in plans, invoices, and images. Their significance, whether Sarah embodied insanity, mysticism, sorrow, quirkiness, or a blend, stays debatable. Every guest traverses identical corridors, yet departs with varied insights. Some detect traces of psychological disorder. Others view it as an innovative approach to coping with loss. Certain souls insist the site validates ghostly phenomena. Others depart discussing heat shifts, air currents, and perceptual tricks. The grand home functions as a reflector. It largely echoes visitors' pre-existing convictions. That openness defines the Winchester house today. It spurns singular theories. It resists tidy tags. After over 140 years, it stays truly enigmatic amid a culture fond of easy resolutions. Sarah penned no personal memoir. She granted no extended discussions clarifying her motives. She offered no declaration of her philosophies or aims. The house stands as her sole testament, and unlike a penned account, architecture provides no annotations. The mansion lends itself to endless interpretations. These days, it rises in the heart of San Jose, California. Once encircled by fruit orchards, it's now nestled amid residential neighborhoods and innovation hubs. The seclusion has vanished. The quiet has faded. Yet the structure persists, vast and meandering, defiantly eluding any single narrative. Each year, hundreds of thousands pass through its halls. They ascend stairways leading to dead ends, linger in the seance chamber, gaze out windows that frame nothing but interior walls rather than the outside view. And they depart carrying their personal take on Sarah Winchester's identity, her purpose in constructing it, and the reason she kept expanding without pause. Chapter 16. The Last Stroll. Stroll through the Winchester Mystery House nowadays, and the path is meticulously orchestrated. Groups stick to designated trails. Ropes in velvet cordon off delicate sections. Plaques detail the building's quirks. It's all structured for safety and efficiency, accommodating crowds while preserving the edifice. But picture traversing it in 1920, back when Sarah still lived there, when the place was actively evolving. You'd step in via whatever portal she had selected that month as the primary access. The entrance shifted from time to time. A household staff member would greet you and usher you inward, along passages that veered abruptly, beyond thresholds where laborers pounded nails and sliced timber. The scents would differ sharply from the present: crisp shavings from fresh cuts, lubricant for tools, damp stucco, and the sharp tang of varnish on newly installed panels. It served as both a home and an ongoing project. Fine particles floated in the atmosphere. Shouts and strikes from mallets reverberated along the passages, rebounding from raw surfaces. You'd go by craftsmen who scarcely glanced your way. They were accustomed to guests. They understood to ignore inquiries. They simply pressed on, adhering to blueprints that could be scrapped for revisions overnight. Come morning, the attendant might direct you to the greenhouse or a parlor. You'd settle amid greenery and substantial furnishings. On occasion, Sarah would emerge. A petite figure, clad in mourning attire, courteous yet aloof, speaking in hushed tones with deliberate phrasing. More often, she wouldn't show. The staffer would come back with regrets. Mrs. Winchester was unavailable. Kindly leave your calling card. Should you encounter her, the exchange would stay courteous and concise. Accounts describe her as murmuring softly, selecting phrases with precision, and wrapping up sessions the moment fatigue set in, which happened frequently. She wasn't entertaining gatherings. She was tolerating brief diversions. Your exit would be via another opening altogether. You'd navigate fresh chambers, a novel corridor, maybe a brief set of steps that you could have sworn wasn't there on arrival. The way out seldom mirrored the way in. Was this deliberate, perhaps to disorient guests, as legend claimed she disoriented ghosts, or merely a byproduct of the intricate warren she'd fashioned? Nobody could say for sure. That era of the house has passed. Sarah's aura has faded. The clamor of the crew has ceased. The impression that the edifice was perpetually transforming has dissolved. All that's left is the framework, the design, absent its designer. Guides fill the void, narrating the peculiarities. That staircase climbing 7 risers only to bump against the overhead, they explain, might stem from spiritual directives received in a seance, or from altered schematics, rendering it redundant, or from her experimenting with a prototype before scaling up. Visitors are encouraged to choose the rationale that resonates. Likewise, the portal swinging open to a 15-foot plunge carries multiple origins. A snare for spectral entities, an incomplete terrace, or an oversight untouched due to the expense and effort of correction. The building offers no resolutions. That's the essence of the Winchester Mystery House's longevity. Beyond the spectral tales that boost admissions, beyond the structural eccentricities, after all, many edifices boast anomalies. It's the ambiguity that endures. The notion that Sarah grasped secrets unknown to sightseers, that the configuration held rationale, the expansion's purpose, the labyrinth's significance, yet she documented none of it, elucidated nothing, and now it's lost to time. It stands as a tribute to enigmas unresolved, sorrow too profound for tidy expression, decisions that clicked for her alone while baffling the world. Guests wander its rooms, attempting to unravel it, interpret it, uncover the blueprint, justifying nearly 4 decades of relentless construction. They won't succeed. Sarah didn't craft it as a puzzle to crack. She constructed, because creation was her lifeline, her way to persist. The motivation stays with her. What she bequeathed to us is the enigma itself, odd, expansive, resolutely opaque, fashioned from timber and panes. It has already surpassed its creator by over 100 years and seems poised to outlive all who encounter this tale. It persists in bewildering guests, inspiring fresh speculations, rejecting simplicity, much as Sarah Winchester did. Chapter 17. Outro. The House at Night. As midnight strikes, the Winchester house dims its lights. The final visitors depart in small clusters. Employees secure the entrances, activate the security systems, and head home. The grand estate lingers in solitude under the veil of night, its silhouette etched against the amber haze from San Jose's lamps and the faint drone of far-off freeway sounds. In these quiet hours, the property echoes the essence of Sarah's era most vividly. Deserted passages, hush interrupted solely by the groan of timber and the subtle settling of its base. Absent are the docents, the chuckling crowds, the recorded narrations, only the inherent noises of the structure, as cooling air causes the elements to shrink and sigh. Surveillance feeds monitor the chambers. Detectors patrol the primary pathways. While the safeguards are cutting edge, the edifice itself dates back generations. Alarms activate without clear triggers. Lenses capture fleeting silhouettes that could amount to mere motes or breezes wafting across the view. The team shares anecdotes. One watchman detected paces on the upper level, despite all access points being bolted. A repairman discovered a pane ajar that he'd fastened securely prior. Minor incidents readily attributed to antiquated fixtures, twisted lumber, or fatigued recollection. Yet these tales accumulate, mirroring the whispers from laborers in the 1890s. Echoes in vacant corridors, portals that refuse to latch. The sensation of a presence lingering beyond vision, gliding between spaces just before your arrival. This installment won't resolve whether the Winchester house harbors genuine spirits. The proof remains open to interpretation. It has ever since. Likely, it forever shall. Far more compelling is the human urge for it to be spectral. Should phantoms dwell here, Sarah's dread proves founded. Her relentless construction served a purpose. The affliction was authentic. For 38 years she battled it through the singular method she grasped. If no ghosts inhabit these walls, if it's merely timber, panes, and the mechanics of a weathered frame, then she toiled for 38 years, pursuing a phantom born solely in her psyche. That's a more poignant, tougher truth to confront. The specter, authentic or fabricated, lends the narrative a tidy form. It transforms mourning into the supernatural, and tales of the otherworldly are simpler to recount. Yet amid the vacant halls at the witching hour, that boundary fades. Sarah Winchester traversed these very paths for decades, solitary in the darkness, issuing directives that baffled outsiders, converting drawings and orders into an edifice that endured beyond her and all her acquaintances. The residence persists as an enigma, baffling in spots, drawing crowds numbering in the hundreds of thousands annually, eager to tread her footsteps, behold her creations, and perhaps discern her inner world. Some seek apparitions, others the design, some the past, a few merely drawn by tales of the odd abode, with ladders ascending to voids. Nearly everyone exits pondering the same enigmas. What truly was Sarah Winchester constructing? In what did she place her faith? What propelled her through 38 years of an unfinished, seemingly senseless endeavor, comprehensible only to herself? The structure offers no replies. It simply endures. thresholds leading to oblivion, risers piercing attics, panes gazing into adjacent panes, a labyrinth of lumber and crystal that defies clarification. Sarah Winchester departed this life over a century ago, yet the legacy she forged endures in questioning, in perplexing those who enter, in demonstrating that certain narratives resist tidy conclusions. Chapter 18. What Remains? The Winchester Mystery House holds California Historical Landmark status, number 868, granted in 1974. The entry plaque states, "Built by Sarah L. Winchester, heir to the Winchester rifle fortune from 1884 to 1922. Folklore claims construction continued without interruption for 38 years to appease spirits." Even the official Marker Hedges folklore claims not Sarah believed or construction was intended to doubt is baked right into the historical record. The house is under constant restoration. Rotten boards replaced, foundations reinforced, seismic retrofitting added to meet modern California earthquake codes, paint analyzed and matched to original colors. The work still never truly stops, only now it is preservation instead of expansion. Approximately 50 staff members work on the property full-time. Tour guides, maintenance crews, historians, gift shop employees, security. More than a century after Sarah's death, the house is still someone's paycheck. Annual revenue reportedly exceeds $10 million. Most comes from admission fees with additional income from events, private tours, corporate gatherings, paranormal investigation nights. Whether true or fabricated, the tale of the curse continues to generate revenue. Field trips bring in students from nearby schools. Programs in architecture examine its design. Courses in psychology analyze ideas about Sarah's mental condition. The lessons drawn from the house vary based on the instructor. Sarah's final resting place lies in New Haven, Connecticut. She shares it with her husband, William, and their daughter, Annie. The family reunited once more, far removed by 3,000 miles from the estate she devoted decades to transforming. Her headstone remains unadorned. It bears no nod to the residents, no allusion to firearms, only the essentials. Names and years. Sarah Lockwood Winchester, 1839 to 1922, passed in San Jose. The mansion fills in the remaining narrative, the elements too vast for inscription on granite. Nearly 4 decades of building, 160 chambers, a web of enigmas that defy complete resolution. As Sarah's true legacy, the Winchester Mystery House endures, eccentric, expansive, defiantly eluding any neat summation, just as she appears to have intended.